Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So this is our second lecture of the short course of wound management. In our first lecture, we have discussed about the wound anatomy, and in this lecture, we will discuss about the wound healing process. So as we all know that in wound anatomy, there is a damage to the tissue and extracellular matrix. So from this, the wound healing is repairing of those damaged tissue and extracellular matrix. And in this lecture, we will discuss that with what kind of process those damaged tissue and extracellular matrix are repaired and replaced by the new ones. So basically, wound is damage to the tissue and extracellular matrix, and wound healing is the repairing and replacement of those damaged tissue and extracellular matrix, and the whole process is known as wound healing process. And we will discuss it with a scenario that will help to understand the phases of wound healing with more precise manner. Okay. uh, in a scenario that we usually encounter in our daily routine, like a 19-year-old girl was cutting an apple with a knife. Suddenly the knife hit her right thumb, forming a laceration wound. Actually, the wound that is formed by a knife is known as laceration. This is the type of the wound, laceration. So any or every type of wound that is usually formed by a knife, by a cut, by a razor, by any or every type of the blade, that wound is known as laceration wound. So in this scenario, the girl was actually cutting an apple with a knife. The knife suddenly hit her right thumb, forming a laceration wound, like from this picture. For instance, the girl was cutting an apple or a potato or anything with a knife. The knife suddenly hit her right thumb, and this is not a laceration wound. This is actually a traumatic one. Laceration is simply a linear cut or a linear scar, but we can relate it with the laceration wound as well. So basically, this is an open wound, and whenever there is an injury to the skin, the first response that our body shows is bleeding. So within few minutes to hours of an injury, there is actually a blood over the that respective or injured area. So the first step of the wound healing is to stop the bleeding, and that is the first phase of wound healing, which is known as hemostasis. Hemostasis. Hem mean blood and stasis means stop, and to stop the bleeding. So the first phase of the wound healing is actually known as hemostasis, to stop the bleeding, and the factors that help to stop the bleeding are platelets. We all know platelets are cells present in our blood. So basically, in first step of the wound healing which is known as hemostasis, platelets aggregate and form a clot over the injured area. In the second step, within after few hours of an injury, when the blood clot form and there is no more bleeding over the wound, the neutrophils and macrophages immediately rush to the area where the wound is formed to remove all kind of debris and pathogens and bacteria and foreign particles from the body, because whenever there is an injury to the skin gets open, and skin are more prone or more susceptible to any type of bacteria or other pathogens. So in second step of wound healing, which is also known as inflammation, in inflammations, neutrophils and macrophages rush to the injured area, and they remove and phagocytose all types of pathogens, and in this kind of fight, the area gets inflamed. So basically, that is why the second step is known as inflammation. The first step, hemostasis, was from few from was from seconds to then hours, and the second step was from few hours after an injury, and this step remains continued till depending on the body areas involved. The ideal duration of this step is from few hours to the 4 to 7 days, the inflammation in the inflamed area. The third step is proliferation. When all the debris and pathogens gets removed from the body, the inflammatory process settling down, then the proliferation of the underlying structures gets started. And the proliferation means the proliferation of fibers, collagen, elastin, and glycosaminoglycans. Three types of fibers proliferate in proliferative area, and proliferate to form extra collagen fibers to fill up the area with healthy tissues. So basically, in third step, proliferation, are healthy tissue formed by different types of fiber, and this healthy tissue is known as granulation tissue. The healthy tissue is known as granulation tissue, and this healthy tissue, it looks like a red and dark pink in appearance. And whenever we see any granulation tissue in the patient's skin, that is a indicative of that the wound is in healing process and in a healthy healing process. So basically, in proliferation, granulation tissue form, and then after the granulation tissue, epithelial tissue, the light pink color, formed over the granulation tissue, which shows that the skin is now healed up completely, and the baby skin is now formed over the skin. So basically, in the first three steps, hemostasis, inflammation, and proliferation, the wound is usually get healed, and the overall time period of this healing process is 3 weeks, 21 days. And this is a healthy healing process of any type of wound, and this is also known as acute wound healing process. The last step, actually there are 4 steps of wound healing: hemostasis, inflammation, proliferation, and remodeling. In the first 3 steps, the blood clot form to stop the bleeding, and then inflammatory process begins to remove any or every type of bacteria and pathogen and foreign particle from the body. And in third step, the proliferative and the healthy tissue forms over the skin. And the final steps are which is also known as remodeling. Remodeling means to keep the and to to reshape the structure of the body into the remaining or existing one. Like in this picture, the in remodeling process, the color of the skin appears and the nail starts grow up, and this is known as remodeling process, to regain or reshape the original structure that was actually there. So basically, this is known as remodeling process. Redesign or restructure the original that was actually present before the wound appear. So basically, the remodeling process start after 3 weeks, and it can continue till 1 year to uh, to keep the shape, structure, and color. It can take 1 to 2 years depending on the body area involved. So basically, that is the main crux of the wound healing process. Like from this picture, in the first step of wound healing, blood clot form to stop the bleeding process. In the second step, neutrophils and macrophages rush to the area and to remove the extracellular, extra, sorry, to remove the bacteria, foreign particles, and damaged tissue from the body. In the third step, all type of fibers gets activated, like collagen, elastin, and glycosaminoglycan that proliferate and to form the granulation tissue and epithelial tissue at the wound area. And in the last step, the remodeling process, freshly healed epidermis and dermis form to reshape or to regain the original structure. 4 types of wound healing process: hemostasis, inflammation, proliferation, and remodeling. The acute wound heal within 3 weeks. It is very important to understand, because the wound that takes more than 3 weeks to heal always heal with hypertrophic scarring. So I repeated, the wound that takes more than 3 weeks to heal heals with hypertrophic scarring, and that is known as chronic wound. That takes months or so long, and chronic wounds always heal with hypertrophic scarring. So Phases of wound healing. Acute wound, in first few hours of the injury, blood clot form. The blood clot form due to platelet aggregations, and fibroblast form a protein mesh, and it is also known as scar to stop the bleeding process. The second step is inflammation, in which neutrophils and macrophages rush to the area and to remove the blood clot and dead macrophages, and it forms a scab over the skin. The third step is hemostasis and inflammation, and the third step is proliferation. And in this slide, the material was actually taken from the book, and the author जो है author divided the proliferative process into the two other types, like epithelialization and fibroplasia. In proliferative phase, epithelial tissue form over the skin, and in the second step of proliferative phase, new blood vessels like angiogenesis starts over the area, and granulation tissue form, which is a clear indication of a healthy tissue. And in the last step, which is also known as remodeling and also known as maturation, the cross-linking and collagen and fibers and other fibers proliferate over the area to reshape or regain the original structure. And in this also step, repigmentation, melanocyte proliferate and restore the normal original color of the damaged skin. Like from this, hemostasis to stop the bleeding process, and in this area blood clot form and platelets aggregate over the area. Inflammation में neutrophils and macrophages rush to the area. Proliferation में all types of fibers, collagen, elastin and glycosaminoglycan rush to the area. Remodeling happens with fibroblast and myofibroblast to reshape to regain the original structure of the body. From this graph, it shows the mediators of the wound healing that rush to the area. In first few hours of an injury, platelets rush to the area to stop the bleeding. After few hours, neutrophils rush to the area, and macrophages also rush to the area. And with passage of time and the day, and when the day is passed on, all types of platelets, neutrophils, macrophages settle down, and in this matrix remodeling process, only fibers, collagen, elastin and glycosaminoglycan rush to the area to stop the bleeding, to reshape or regain the original structure. So basically this is the overall crux of a wound healing process, that hemostasis to stop the bleeding, inflammation to remove the damage and extracellular pathogens, and proliferation, in which epithelialization and fibroplasia happens for the healthy tissue, granulation tissue and epithelial tissue. And in remodeling process, the original structures of the body form, the color retained, and this phase is the longest phase. Acute wound heal within 3 weeks, and chronic wound takes more time to heal. And the chronic wound, actually those wound that where there is large area involved, and there are underlying factor like diabetes, hypertension, dyslipidemias, poor nutrition, poor health, that actually delays the wound healing process. So basically this is the crux of the complete lecture, wound healing. And in next upcoming lecture, we will discuss the case study that will actually demonstrate how does a wound heal in an acute state and in a chronic state. So I hope this you have understood this lecture, and thank you so much.